breath into the images and the music. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies. Think of all the people on the planet and the world who love the lands in which they were born, the lands they live in, their families, their generations. So many of our nations hurting and in trouble in so many ways. We just simply take a breath into the heart of humankind to be brave enough, to care enough, to ask the hard questions, to deepen into the hardest of issues, and reach for answers and reach for responses to the woes of the world in a way that bless the entire community. It helps to create a world that is fair and kind to all peoples. It is a brave, courageous, sacred, and holy thing to allow ourselves to pause and look into the hardest questions around some of our most hard-held beliefs. And so this morning, as we take another deep breath, we let our hearts and our minds open. We don't have to figure out all the hard issues at once. We simply have to be open. We're invited to be present with the issues of our own lives and the issues of the world community. We hold all governments and world leaders everywhere in our hearts of prayer. We don't have to understand specific actions or decisions. We simply hold all governments and world leaders in our heart and our consciousness of knowing that we human beings have the capacity to make the highest and most helpful decisions that help to create a world of kindness. We human beings have the capacity to speak with one another in a way that helps to create the outcomes that are helpful. The outcomes that help to generate kindness and understanding and compassion, fairness. We bless ourselves, our human family, in this capacity to reach for the highest, most helpful action and response in every moment. As Bobby said, we bless all soldiers everywhere, not just in this country. And we simply say, peace, peace, peace. Would you say that with me 3 times? Peace, peace, peace. Peace to our human family, to our planet, the oceans and rivers, the air, the minerals, our national parks, our beautiful lands and rivers, canyons. Peace, peace, peace. And we say namaste to all that we're holding in our heart. So it is and so let it be. We see the spirit of the one presence in all life, all peoples. Namaste. Wasn't that a beautiful video? I remember the first time I saw the Grand Canyon. What was it for you, the first time you saw something in this country so beautiful, so remarkable that it took your breath away? The Grand Canyon. Colorado. Sedona. Alaska. Iceland. Oh, this country. Okay, I'm on the globe again. This country, what else?
Glacier National Park.
What? Glacier National Park. What? Rocky Mountains.
Fall in West Virginia.
The what? Fall. Fall in West Virginia. Or the Adirondacks. Whoa. Where? Kauai. Santa Barbara.
The National Gallery of Art, the only wonderful art museum in the world.
The
that's
National,
free.
the National Gallery of Art. In our country, we get to go for free to the National Gallery of Art. What about your back deck? Oh, somebody just said it. The cardinals on your back deck at your bird feeder. What about your own little, the pavilion 60 years ago? What about your own little potted plant of parsley or sage or oregano? I mean, it's the simplest things, right? Your fig tree. Oh, we have sibling figs. Yes, we do. Our fig trees. We're eating the first figs. I mean, we celebrate the first fig that we picked a few days ago. It's here. It's here. We're blessed, are we not? And so we take a deep breath into that sense of gratitude, because that's the place where we keep finding the best answers and the best solutions and the best responses to things that are happening in the world that feel hard. So that's the place we want to move out from, that place of gratitude for the simplest things. When I talk with people about what is it that lifts your heart so much, it's never the big exotic things. It's the simple things, every time. So we're talking about this idea of nonviolent communication. We're talking about this idea of speaking peace in a world of conflict. We're talking about crucial conversations today, the power of dialogue. And we're going to move tomorrow night into the class, 4 nights, 2 Mondays, 2 Wednesdays, about this idea. How many of you feel like you have it down pat, you don't need any work at all in the way you communicate with others? Okay, Charlene's got it. You can skip the class, just talk with with Charlene. Just, or Leska. Yeah. Or Leska. Yeah. So what is a crucial conversation? Remember that scripture where Jesus said, where 2 or more are gathered together in my name, my presence, my consciousness, that the Spirit would be in the midst of them? Well, this is suggesting the same thing. Crucial conversations happen when 2 or more people are gathered together to discuss something where stakes are high, opinions differ, beliefs differ, and our emotions are running very high. Your HOA meetings, right? Or your family dinner table at Thanksgiving. Or on the phone with your son, your daughter, your sibling. So anybody here ever have a conversation where as soon as it was done, you started assessing, what could I have done differently? Oh, that would have kept the doors open rather than the doors slamming. We all have our communication styles. You know, we all, if we're honest, have a communication style that is sometimes clear and helpful and creative, and sometimes it halts abruptly in many different ways. I was raised in a family that included lots of love, lots of hugs, and there was this other thing it included. It included a lot of slamming doors and yelling. And we're not even Italian. Lots of slamming doors. So when David and I got together, he was amazed at how hard I could slam a door.
I still am.
No, I don't do that anymore. I don't slam those doors anymore. But at the beginning of our relationship, I learned to not have discussions, not have creative dialogue. I learned to have arguments, and I learned to fight the way my family fought. One time, Pam threw a fork at my head. It went right by my head and into the wall. And she was the nice one. So, let's all assess our communication styles, right? Right? We all have communication styles. So, what are our communication styles? Sometimes when we hit on an opportunity for a crucial conversation, sometimes we respond with, whoop, I'll just ignore this. And if I don't see it, it's not there. I will just avoid it. Anybody ever do that? Yes. Oh, yes. Or we confront these crucial conversations and handle them poorly.
Okay, I'll take that
one. And sometimes we handle them violently. Now, sometimes violence means a fist through the wall, or a slamming door, or it can be our words, our accusations, our sarcasm, our snide remarks. I've read about how some of you do this. And then sometimes we enter into the conversation. In other words, we handle it, we hold it in a good way. And we hold it in a way where the perfect solution or understanding or wholeness can be revealed. That's actually what we're reaching for. That we hold an issue and we hold the people within the issue, we hold the space so that the best solution, the wholeness, can be revealed. Do you think it's possible?
Yes.
I've seen it happen, so I know it's possible. So the reason we want to handle our crucial conversations a little bit better is because right now in the world, it may be that more dialogue would be helpful. It may be that deep, trusting dialogue would be helpful. We are bound to one another. We are bound to one another. We're all going to either go off the cliff together, or we're going to find a way to hit the pause button and not go off the cliff. So maybe this would be something good for us to consider. I want to read one little quote to you out of this book, Crucial Conversation. By the way, this is all based on Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication work. He says, just as the world is changing, this is Stephen Covey, by the way, giving this foreword. Y'all know Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Just as the world is changing at frightening speed and has become increasingly and profoundly interdependent with marvelous and dangerous technologies, so too have the stresses and pressures we all experience increased exponentially. We are anxious to get our way understood and implemented, but many have their own way. So what this crucial conversation reaches for is the synergistic understanding that exists within every issue. Understanding from everybody in the picture. And in order for us to understand each other, we have to listen to each other. That's just the way it works. But how many of us get into conversation, and as soon as we've got our view out, we're ready for it to end. We're not ready to hear the other person's perspective. So this book suggests, and this work suggests, that what starts as a doomed discussion can wind up with a healthy resolution. In fact, it can take your breath away. How many of us have had that experience where we enter into a conversation? I know you have money. At book group, we talk about some of the incredible breakthroughs that some of us are having with people that we've had long-standing issues with. But when we open up to the possibility of creating peace and understanding and a good resolution, if we'll just open up to the possibility, it can happen even more. We can transform crucial conversations from frightening events to interactions where positive resolution can happen. So that's a good goal, isn't it? We can take something frightening and we can turn it into something good. And this is the reason we want to do it. We're bound to each other's lives. We're bound to one another. And I had this slide up last week. There's you in one side of the infinity circle, and there's you in the other side of the infinity circle. La Keche, I'm another yourself. And it's also true of all creation. What are we in dialogue with? You know, this book is about being in dialogue with one another, with people. But I want to suggest we're in dialogue all the time. We're in dialogue with the inner presence. We're in dialogue with what some of us call Holy Spirit. We're in dialogue with nature. We're in dialogue with the energies all around us. You see, Friday, I was sitting on my deck at 5 a.m. and I was listening first on the surface. Could hear the crickets, katydids, the birds, the splashes in the water. I was listening on the surface, and I started really listening to the birds, the crickets, the frogs. There's this deep kind of symphony that's going on. And it seems to me that when I'm listening more closely, the birds are singing more enthusiastically. Call me crazy. It seems when I'm watching the kingfishers do their diving dances, it seems that when I start watching that they start putting on more of a show. I mean, that's the way it seems to me. There's a deep, deep listening. And then when I deepen more into meditation, then I'm listening and sensing my connection with all of us. You know, the dialogue that we have on the inner, the dialogue we have in spirit is far more energetic than the conversations we have when we're in person. Because when we're in spirit dialogue, we bypass the silliness. We bypass the fear consciousness. When we're in dialogue in spirit, we bypass fear consciousness. We go to the deeper understanding. Does that make sense? Research shows, so you can take this to the bank. Research shows there are 3 techniques that happen generally when we enter into a tough conversation. Number 1, we digress into threats and name calling. Let's all pause and think of a current example. I have a hard time coming up with one. But then research also shows we revert to silent fuming. I'm not talking about when you say, I'm going to go into my sanctuary, my meditation room, and go into silence. No, it's silent fuming, which can be some of the loudest stuff. That's when you go into the kitchen and slam cabinets around, but you're not saying anything. I'm in silence. That's when you start putting the dishes away with such vigor that you start breaking them.
Emphatic placement.
And what?
Emphatic.
Emphatic placement. Yes, emphatic placement. I'm putting these dishes up. Bam! This is a different kind of silence. This is the silence that is very, very loud. And then there's that one we speak openly, honestly, and we start breathing from a very deep place, and we realize, oh, there's a way to get to truthful, honest, open dialogue. I can stop slamming the doors now. We're going to enter into the Holy of Holies, the place where the Christ consciousness speaks with Christ consciousness, the place where the light of the world speaks with the light of the world. Oh, it's so easy. I don't know why we're not doing it more often. So, again, Martin Luther King says our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. So it may be that crucial conversations hold some element of healing and transformation for us. Research shows that our immune systems are healthier when we communicate more effectively. That makes sense. So let's break down the word dialogue. D-I-A, Greek, means passing through, or the measurement across. That's the D-I-A part, the measurement across. And log, Greek, to speak. I speak across. I'm going to make my way across the divide with the way I speak. How wide is the divide between those with whom we're caught up in some issue? Differing political beliefs, differing understanding between siblings, spouses, families. We cross the divide. We're willing to cross the divide. So, one of the stories that demonstrates this the most wonderful way to me is that very famous story about Jesus when the angry crowd comes to him. Remember this story? And they point to the woman and they say, she's broken the law. She's an adulteress. She's broken the law. And what happened?
Yeah. The first step.
Yeah. They said, this woman needs to be stoned. That was the law back then. And Jesus spoke across the divide. He did something really remarkable. Now, you may not see this as a dialogue, but I do. He entered into dialogue with beliefs of thousands of years. The woman must be stoned. She's broken the law. No questions asked. And you know, here's the deal. It wasn't just tossing little rocks at a person. It was taking big, giant stones and piling them on top of the person. There wasn't an opportunity for her to run while rocks were being thrown at her. No. So she was facing her death. And Jesus did something really remarkable. This is key in crucial conversations. He paused. He didn't start, there was another choice for him. There was another script. And he could have said, you nutso wacko men. Who was she with when she committed adultery? All of you get in the line to be stoned as well. He could have said that. But he paused. And he drew something in the sand. I have a feeling, I have no idea. Maybe it was that infinity symbol. I have no idea when he drew in the sand. I have an idea in Aramaic he wrote, breathe. He paused. How many of us have had that experience where we pause before we say something stupid?
That's the hardest part.
That's the hardest part. Pause. Hit the pause button. That's what he did. And he bought time. Because he was probably thinking, oy vey. What do I do now? What do I say that will speak sanity into a moment of insanity? How do I enter into a dialogue with this angry crowd that's holding the stones, ready to kill this woman? And y'all remember what he said. After he doodled in the sand, the divine doodle. We'll never know. But whatever he was doing in that moment, he reached the place of creating a space of safety where everyone could win in that moment. It was remarkable. He said just a few words, spoke to the angry men and said, you who are without sin, go ahead, throw the first stone. Well, things went kind of silent then. Sometimes we can speak across the divide, the dialogue. We can speak that measurement across from one belief to another. We can speak across the divide and speak healing and transformation into the moment. And that's what he did. If you remember the story, they all dropped their stones and just, they left. And then Jesus turned to the woman and said, your accusers, they've left. They're gone. So go and stay out of trouble. Don't hang out with those goofballs anymore. So what is it in us? What do we call that place in us that has the capacity to pause, take a deep breath, consider, ponder? What do I say now that will speak across the divide that's between you and me, between us and them? How do we speak across the divide in the world right now between different political beliefs and different courses of action for our planet, for the immigration issues, for every single human arena in the world right now? How do we speak across the divide to get to holy response? So skilled dialogue makes it safe for everyone to add their meaning to the pool of shared meaning. What the heck does that mean? Skilled dialogue means that I'm going to help create a space where everyone's voices are heard. We see that happen often in our Wednesday book group. And on a few occasions, we've needed more practice. Skilled dialogue means we keep practicing because we know it's possible. We give up when we stop believing something's possible. We're working towards the common good of the entire community. You see, what we're learning in the world is just because one has all they need to have a healthy, happy life doesn't mean that the world is healthy and happy if many others in the world don't have the basics that they need for a healthy life. We get to this point in our understanding where we realize, I've got enough for me over here, for me and my group, and I'm not going to worry about you and your group. We've got enough in our group. We've gotten to a place where we can't do that anymore, right? So reaching for the helpful, most kind dialogue in the world, to me, is one of the ways healing is coming into the world. One of the ways transformation is happening in the world. Just be willing to have the dialogue. Be willing to enter into it. The dialogue gifted, I love that. The dialogue gifted, they get all the relevant information from themselves and their others into the conversation. How many times have you had to say to yourself or somebody else, do you have all the facts yet? Because you're coming up with an interpretation, and you're deciding what this event means without having all the information. Is that a good idea? Get the facts straight. So dialogue gifted, they get all the information from self and others. They create a safe environment so that we can share our opinions, our feelings, even though they differ. And we share our views and listen to others' views without attacking. Anybody on Facebook? No. What we say next can change our world. What you say can change your world. Everybody say, what I say can change my world. What I say can change my world. And also, what I don't say can change my world. For the positive or for the negative. How many of you feel like in your relationships, all of your relationships, that you have your skilled dialogue in place and that you don't need any practice? David and I could get awards for how great we have, what a long way we've come from fighting dirty to approaching the ability to have skilled dialogue. Sometimes we do it great. Sometimes we're still learning. That's just a truthful assessment. A couple of years ago, we had some blow up about something. I have even no idea what it was. And David, one of his skills is just simply leave the house. And sometimes that could be hours or longer. But in about, and I was standing at the stove fuming, and then this feeling swept over me. I mean, it took about 5 minutes, which is incredible. It could have taken 5 days or 5 months in the early days. But in about 5 minutes, I'm standing there thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't want to spend my day all upset. I don't want to spend my day doing it. You know what? I'm not even going to do this. I'm done. I'm done with all that. I'm just going to have a good day. Within a minute or two, he walks back in the house. He comes up to me at the stove and he goes, I don't want to do this, do you? I said, no, I know. And it was done. And then we were able to talk about what was really going on. You see, we make a decision. We can choose hate, we can choose unkindness, we can choose really, really sad and hateful sarcasm or unkindness. We can choose that. But there comes a point in us when we just, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore. That's just not good for me anymore. My immune system is like not happy with this anymore. I'm done. Now, does that mean I'm never going to get angry again? No! Anger can be good. It doesn't mean there's never going to be a conflict. Conflicts can open us up to the next creative solution. But the way I am in my dialogue, the way I am in the way we have differing opinions, that can be done in a more conscious way. Right?
Yes. And it's so worth doing.
It's so
when
worth
you can hit that point.
when you can get that point. It's so worth doing. So as a culture, as a community, as a human species, I say it all the time, I just get it more and more. We're watching our own evolution. Just have a song like Bobby did this morning. You know, the realization, I can pray for my football team to win. Oh yeah. But does that make sense? You can't sit on the front row if you're not going to participate. Does it make sense to pray for my country to win a war? You know, we have a cousin whose husband was a bomber in Vietnam. And we were there visiting in Florida recently, and I said, have you ever been back to Vietnam, you know, to do some healing work, some work for peace in your own heart and mind? Have you ever been back? He said, I was never in Vietnam to begin with. I said, what do you mean? He says, I was flying the bombers. He said, we flew out of Thailand, and we go over and bomb Vietnam, and then we go back to Thailand. He said, and then I just had to think about all the people on the ground that I just bombed. You know, he had a different experience in Vietnam. He was never in the jungles. He was up in the air dropping the bomb. So we drop bombs in all kinds of ways. We drop bombs with our beliefs. We drop bombs with our actions. We drop bombs with our assumption that we've got the best country in the world. And you know what? We're being brought to our knees. Other countries are praying for us now. It used to be America praying for everybody else. Now other countries are praying for us. So this idea of crucial conversation, it's not easy. With your children, your siblings, your families, your partners, and ultimately in the way we have dialogue about what's going on in the world and with other countries and other people of other lands and what's happening. It's time that we get more real and honest. about what we're trying to create here. So let's take a deep breath and just take a pause. We don't know all the answers. We know we have the capacity to open our hearts and minds, examine our beliefs, examine our opinions, examine our perspectives, and be open to hearing the perspectives and beliefs of other people, other places, other cultures, other political parties, other religions. And hold one another in a place where transformative, healing dialogue can happen. We're the healers we've been waiting for. We're the transformers we've been waiting for. We breathe into that awareness and we give thanks. Give thanks, as I heard a little boy say recently, I give thanks from the very, very, very bottom of my heart. And we say, so it is, and so let it be. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Reverend Margaret. I thought my way of dealing with it is I would just be around people who agreed with me.
Yeah.
But you really can't do that, so I signed up for the course. I already took the test. I know y'all are surprised to hear this about me. I am very low on violence and huge on silence. So I'm looking forward to it.